This is Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast, with your hosts, Brandon Spinner and Michael Burns.
And welcome into another episode of Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast. I am Brandon Spinner alongside my best buddy, Michael Burns, as always. Mikey, how you doing on this final week before Major League Baseball?
Before opening day, it has been a great week of baseball. It was fantastic what we got to do this year. It's not every year.
Not every year.
Not every year. We
Three
thought
more years, though. 3 more years.
We thought this was our first normal spring training since 2019. We thought. But then the World Baseball Classic happened.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that here in just a few minutes. Otherwise, how you doing, man? Home good? Life good?
Yeah, the arm is coming along well.
Arm's coming along? Yeah. Well, how many weeks post-op are you now?
I had it December 14th.
All right, so 3 months, so you're about 14 weeks? Give or take a couple of days.
Yeah, I'm in the gym a little bit more regular. This is the third regular week in a row that I've hit the gym. I haven't missed a day. The shoulder feels better, I think, because of it a little bit. I'm building the muscles around where they destroyed and building those muscles back up, and I'm feeling it. The net in the backyard feels it.
Oh yeah, you're throwing already.
Oh, I've been doing a program. I think I started in February, like 15-week program.
Well, here he is,
ready,
folks.
Baby. I'm gonna be ready.
Sideburns. You should grow sideburns, because then you could be sideburns.
We'll give that a look.
Give it a look.
I'll talk to my
wife
people.
Will be okay with that? Yeah.
I'll talk to my people.
Well, you're joining us here for Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast. We talk about bourbon and baseball, also whiskey, so not just strictly bourbon. You can find us here on YouTube. Maybe some of you watching. We hit 50 subscribers, so woot woot. I wish we had a round of applause
a soundbar
button. We're going to have to make some money and maybe get a soundboard to make the claps.
Here, I got one button right here. Oops, sorry, wrong one.
I should make my Foghorn app ready to go. And you can head on over and find us on YouTube at Barrels and Barrels Pod. Hit the subscribe button right below. And if you can, please hit the alarm button on the subscribe button, because then it'll actually send you alerts every time we post a video or send out some cool content. You also can find us on Instagram. We're almost to 1,000 followers. I think we're just shy of 900. So that Instagram handle at Barrels and Barrels Pod. And you can also find us on Facebook at Barrels and Barrels Pod. We've been pretty active over there for the last couple of weeks, all being part of the World Baseball Classic, which we'll jump into as well. You can review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. That would be awesome. You can also find us on Amazon Podcasts. And now we are on Stitcher, along with Google Pods, as well as iHeartRadio Podcasts. We do want to give out a couple of shout-outs. Some new YouTube subscribers, JP Wright and Robert Bonin, joined in here over the last couple of days. And also, we did get another review on Apple Podcasts, Mikey. How many stars?
LVR. Was it good? We wouldn't talk bad too.
Yeah, you talk bad about us if you want. We want like legit reviews. We've got 5.0 out of 5. So we're 5 stars all across the board. 13 ratings, 13 5 stars. So thank you to all of you.
There you go.
And if you do that, can you please leave a review? We just got a new one. It's titled, Let's Go, from My Horse Lover. A unique combination of topics makes for a great podcast. Michael Brandon provided great information and conversations surrounding bourbon and baseball, and it is fun listen to the passion of these two guys have for both. Highly recommend. So thank you, My Horse Lover. I'm going to guess it's My Horse Lover. It's My Horse LVR. So
watch it be something completely different.
My Horse Liver. If it's a horse liver, I bet you could drink a lot more. But thank you to whoever that was that shared that rating. Again, head on over to Apple or Spotify, please hit the 5-star if you like us. If not, let us know what you'd like to see different. But we'll give you a shout out just like we did with my horse LVR. T-shirt order, we posted that on Instagram here the last couple of days. We're just about to put in an order.
Good feedback. Yeah,
we've got quite a bit of T-shirts to order. So if you'd like one, reach out to Michael on Instagram or myself or our Barrels and Barrels of Bourbon and Baseball podcast IG account as well. So that's it for the business up front. Let's dive in to the bourbon portion of the Barrels and Barrels of Bourbon and Baseball podcast. We've got a special one this week.
Oh boy.
Today's technically the second full day of spring as we record this, so nothing better than having a winter whiskey. We are going with New Riff's winter whiskey. I want to give a big shout out to my buddy, my coworker, Evan Millward, who has loaned the rest of his bottle to us. I actually bought this for Evan back in December because he said it is one of the favorite whiskeys he's ever had, and he wasn't able to get it because this was a distillery-only release at New Riff, and New Riff, of course, is in northern Kentucky, right along the river, just south of Cincinnati, out into Bellevue. They list their address as Newport, but they're in Bellevue where their distillery is, and their barrel house is in Newport, Kentucky, which is literally like a stone's throw away. It's like the city line is a block away. So this is their winter whiskey. It's a distillery only, $50 MSRP, so not bad. It's not one of those that's going to break the bank. It's really unique, though. Listen to this mash bill. 65% corn, 20% malted oats, 7% pale ale malt, 5% steel cut raw oats, and 3% chocolate malt.
Uh-oh. This is very unique. Holy. Pale ale malt, steel cut oats, and chocolate oats, you said?
Chocolate malt.
Chocolate malt. Oh,
so
my.
65% corn.
Malt
20% malted oats, 7% pale ale malt, 5% steel cut raw oats, and 3% chocolate malt. This is aged at least 4 years on the bottle, and this again comes from New Riff Distillery out in Newport, Kentucky. If you're in the Cincinnati area, you know where that's at, but it's basically a Cincinnati distillery. It's just on the other side of the river, as Kentucky and Ohio meet.
Wow.
Right there at
so
the Ohio.
No rye, no wheat.
Mm-mm.
This is no barley.
No barley. Malted. They believe in a lot of malted. I don't know if you noticed that. Out of the 5, there's 3 of them that are malted. And when I did a distillery tour the other day with Cat's Cocktails and Conversations, which is Jenny and Chris, as well as Michael and Jesse, which is Michael at 1311 Miscellaneous, and Jesse is at Lady in the Bourbon. They even have a full malted rye. Like 100% malted rye is their rye. So they very, very strongly believe in the malt. So this is very unique. We're going to give it a try.
Yeah, so if that was Evan's favorite, you gave the bottle and he gave it back. If that's his favorite and it is funky after this mash bill, I'm going to question his palate a little bit. But hey.
I do trust Evan's palate. But he said it was one of the best. He said the 2021 was one of the best ones he ever had. He still said this one was pretty delicious. It's a yearly release in December. And again, comes in at about $50. Distillery only, though. At least it was this year.
What's the proof
I had to go grab one. Well, it's a bottle and bond bourbon as well. So that's going to come out at 100 proof. If you haven't listened to our bottle and bond episode, that means anything that is bottle and bond has to come in at 50% alcohol by volume, which is 100 proof. So yeah, here it is. I'm
gonna start nosing this thing over here.
Yeah, it's very unique.
I've had New Riff. I have a New Riff single barrel that I got in Nashville many years ago, and I probably got 2 to 3 pours left in it, and I thought it was a lighter whiskey tasting. I want to say it was 2018 that I got a single barrel straight, not from New Riff, locally in Nashville there.
So I'm using the Pix app. Big shout out to Pix app. I really love what they're doing over there because it really just helps you kind of keep track of all your thoughts if you don't have pen and paper in front of you. Also, if like you see or you smell something that you just can't quite put a finger on. It allows you to pick something out and be like, ah, that's what that is.
Right.
I find a very unique. This has a classic New Riff nose to it to me. I pull mint out of all the New Riffs that I've ever had, or spearminty at least.
I don't get like a fruit at all. No, there's no fruit in this nose.
I got apricot. I've got apricot, some spearmint. I do get a little bit of that chocolate, butterscotch, caramel, and there's like a burnt toast.
Yeah, I get like the more on that side. That's all I get right there. All that malt.
The nose to me is pretty good. It's interesting, but it's not like a turn off right away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's for me. It's not. I don't. It's the word I'm looking for is kind of like dark on the nose. There's nothing light and spicy and fruity about it. It's very like malty and oaty a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Is the way I describe it.
The only fruity part of it I get out is apricot, and I think there's a little bit of a spearminty mint portion to it. Not overpowering by much, but I think it's there for me. It's a decent nose. I'll say that. I've already coated my mouth. Have you taken a?
I just did that coat, and it is like mint gum on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
Mint gum. I mean, and now that I'm letting it fall through the back of my mouth, it's like I'm chewing a piece of spearmint gum.
I get a lot of spearmint out of New Riff stuff.
This is like I'm chewing a piece of gum right now. Double mint. Double mint.
Mouthfeel's got like a little bit of a sharp, syrupy feel to me.
Mm-hmm. It's not oily.
No,
it's not. It's not oily.
It does have a bite right away to me. Like from the moment it hits your mouth, you can. This sips to me higher than a 100 proofer.
Agreed. And I wonder if that's that. Of course, there's that spice, which is interesting to me. What's causing that spice out of that mash bill there? You think?
It could be the barrel. My guess is the pale ale malt. Think about like a pale ale beer, right? Yeah. It's got a little bit of that bitterness to it. And this is a very, like the first thought when I took a sip, got a bitterness to it. So if you're a craft beer lover, I think that this would be right up your alley, being that it's got that bitterness to it. I'm not a huge IPA fan, so I'm kind of turned off a little bit by it on the pale part of it, the bitterness. I think that there's a little bit of a bite. There's some burn to it. It's got a little bit of pungentness to it as well. It's
Do you
funky.
get any oak? Do you get oak out of this?
Slight, not much. Slight, like very young, immature oak.
And I think that's the idea. I mean, does it say chocolate? It says chocolate on the bottle, and I think by saying it's a dark, it's a heavier, it's oaty. This is like chocolate oats. It was heavy on the nose. It's heavy on the palate even.
3% chocolate malt, so not a huge percentage of that, but it is roasted chocolate malted barley. Yeah. So it says a unique whiskey was inspired by our brewing background. So it's got that brewing background to it, as they say. So you can definitely feel that or taste that coming through in my mind.
So it is malted barley. You said it's chocolate malted barley.
Chocolate malted barley, yes.
So, okay. Earlier I said there was no malted barley. Yes.
So I guess there is malted barley, but it's just roasted chocolate malted barley.
This doesn't give out that heavy oak. There's no heavy oak. There's no vanilla.
I think there's more vanilla or butterscotch on the nose than there is in the palate.
Nothing light about this. It's all. And it's a great comparison. This is more of a hoppy, type of dram.
Definitely. I've got a taste on the backside. I want to hear your thoughts first, and then I'm going to give my thoughts because I don't want to taint your palate. But there's a unique back end to this that changes the whole thing for me.
You're talking about the finish?
Yeah, the finish in the back half of the mouth pour.
Yeah, the back half. It's almost like that's where that chocolate comes in. But it's a dark chocolate.
Right. It's bitter.
It's not semi-sweet. It's not milk chocolate. It's like 80% cacao.
80% cacao. I got bitter oak, and that's what I'm putting here. I'm going to call it like an ashtray finish almost.
Ooh.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
how do you get that?
like, it almost feels like what I would assume ashes taste like from a cigarette.
All right. I mean, it's like what you eat enough grass and dirt as a kid, but you know what, like when you eat that Birdie Bots jelly bean that tastes like mud or grass, you're like,
yep.
I know what I got.
It's got like a charcoaly and like ashtray bitterness to it.
Yeah. And so here's a comparison I have for that back end. I said it was like a dark chocolate. You know, the Tootsie Pops, a 1, a 2, a 3. This tastes like a one. You know, one that there was no lollipop left to it. And you're just sucking on chocolate.
Sucking on chocolate. That's going to be the name of this episode. Sucking on chocolate. So on our Barrels and Barrels of Bourbon and Baseball podcast rating scale, which goes from top of the top, Hall of Famer, All-Stars. Second, third is an everyday player, which is just a guy that you have on your everyday lineup, whether that's on the bar or on the baseball field. He's always someone that you can rely on to be in your lineup and put out a consistent output. Bench player, not a bad player, just doesn't crack the everyday lineup. Go to him for a mix-up here or there. And then the DFA, designate for assignment. Do not want you on my team. Get out of here. Go to somebody else's bar. So on our rating scale, Mikey, where you
at? Sorry, Evan. Don't really. This is just isn't my jam. This isn't my dram. I got DFA this guy.
So there's another DFA for Mikey, the X-Man Burns, coming in with a DFA.
This is almost like Screwball for me. Peanut butter whiskey, just not good.
I'm gonna also DFA it. Yeah.
All right, people, you hear that? Brandon with his first DFA. Brandon crapping on a bourbon. Can you believe it, folks? Can you believe it? I mean, you had to expect it after that ashtray comparison there.
I think that's what turns me off. And it's not that. It's more so I'm not an IPA fan by any means. I do not like anything that's too hoppy. I don't like bitterness of my beer. Like, I'm going for a light beer or an ale. I'm not going for an IPA. The bitterness of an IPA just really turns me off. So that's why I had to DFA this. I like New Riff. I've got another bottle on the shelf behind me. Somewhere back there. It's right there. Right there. Just picked that up the other day.
Okay,
and
there. Right.
But yeah, it just wasn't my jam. I trust Evan's palate. I know Evan likes beer too, though. So that's a big thing. And I know that if you're a fan of IPAs or stuff like that, you're going to like this bottle. But that's not for me and Mikey. That's all I'll say.
It's almost a dessert bourbon a little bit because as I sit here, you got to get past that spice and that mint. But now I'm just like that Tootsie Roll Pop is just sitting in my mouth. Or like Screwball whiskey.
It's got that dark chocolate feel for sure. And I enjoy their malted rye. If you haven't had their malted rye, it's fantastic. Their regular rye is really good. I'm just not a fan of their winter whiskey. They've got a new special one coming out here soon. Hold on, I gotta look that up.
When's the last time, Brandon, I haven't finished a pour during this review, and I'm not going back to it. I'm just sitting here.
Yeah,
find myself not. I mean, I'm going to. It's still brown water, and because my other ones are. Oh wait, no, I got my babies back here. I can pour me some BRT right here.
You've still got some left?
I'm about halfway. I try to spread the love.
So New Riff Winter Whiskey, a distillery-only release. I do think they're also coming out with another distillery-only release that drops in the month of April. It's called Silver Grove, and I believe it's an homage to their Silver Grove Rick House warehouse, which is where their new warehouse in Silver Grove is being built, just to the east of the distillery, I believe. So go grab one of those as well. That is a regular mash bill of 65-35. So 65, 30, and 5. So that'll be a little bit more on the traditional
bourbon
whiskey bourbon, and that is also a bottled in bond. So you want to check them out. Not trying to crap all over a new Riff. I like what they put out, just not a fan of the winter whiskey. And again, I think that's just because of the
mash bill.
The mash bill. It's got to be the pale ale malt that really hits me, because I feel
sure
like
some
I
people
would
like it. I'm sure some people like it. People like Screwball. People like.
Mm-hmm. Well, think of the beer crowd out there, right? Like, that's a big thing, and IPAs are generally one of the things people tend to go to. So if you're a fan of an IPA, I think this would be right up your alley. I just don't think that anybody who doesn't enjoy a bitter beer is going to like this, because it has a bitter beer, better, beer better.
Hoppy, like a hoppy.
It's got a hoppiness to it. It's like a chocolate hoppiness in my mind. Not chocolate happiness, chocolate hoppiness.
Chocolate rain.
That has been the Barrels and Barrels Bourbon and Baseball Podcast bourbon portion. New Riff. I like what they're doing, just don't like the winter whiskey. So go check them out. Give them a shout out. Their tour was incredible. So if you're ever in town, cheap tour, and the whiskey's good outside of the winter whiskey. So moving on, we're going to go to trivia, because we just had the World Baseball Classic, Michael. I figured let's go with a World Baseball Classic trivia question. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready, baby.
Okay. Who's the first USA player to ever hit homers in back-to-back games in the World Baseball Classic on a USA team?
I've got two guys sitting on top of my mind. I'm going to tell you who they are, and then I'm going to tell you who I think it is.
Okay.
It's Ken Griffey or David Wright. And I'm going to go with David Wright.
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
And neither of them. Man, that's so hoppy. That is the wrong answer. You're going to love the answer. It is Derek Lee.
Let's go.
In 2006. So,
Derek
Lee, you may remember him as a Chicago Cub or a Florida Marlin. I believe he finished his
Cub.
career with the Braves and the Pirates after he got traded away from the Cubs. But Derek Lee, very good first baseman, 2005, should have won the MVP.
And it was so close to a Triple Crown. I think he won MVP, didn't he?
He did win the MVP.
Not Triple Crown.
That's what it was. It was a stud season, and that was the year the Cubs just kind of fell apart.
Is that 05?
I think it was 05. He hurt his wrist in 06?
No. 2005 with Albert Pujols, with Derek Lee finishing third.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think he won the MVP that year.
And
that's why we have Portals.
He led in batting average, home runs, and he was short in RBIs. Yeah, so that was the year for the Triple Crown. He was 10 RBI short of Pujols.
And he still didn't win. Pujols beat him. Man,
Pujols still beat him. He had more. I mean, Pujols had an 8.4 WAR. Derek Lee finished third in the MVP voting. Not even second, third.
Who finished in second?
Andrew Jones of Atlanta Braves with 78%.
And that's who had the answer of our last trivia question last week.
Derek Lee only had one first place vote.
That's nuts.
And he was so close to the Triple Crown.
That's nuts. Well, Derek Lee played for Team USA. Team USA made it pretty far. Last night was the final. We'll jump into that here in a second. I want to touch on the Trey Turner incident on Saturday night. What did you think of that?
The Trey Turner incident?
Yeah, the Grand Slam, brother.
Oh, I was incident. I'm
happened?
thinking, catastrophe. No, that was.
It was a catastrophe for Venezuela.
Yeah, that's for sure. Which you gotta get something else to drink there, Brandon.
Yeah, I'm going with King Ranch. Sample from Lisa Grace, who's also an avid listener of Barrels and Barrels. So thank you, Lisa.
Trey Turner, I think, was the hottest player on Team USA. Maybe I don't know if he was in all of WBC, but I think he set or tied the record. I think he set the record, a new record, for most home runs by a player on Team USA in the WBC with 6 or
Damn.
5. I think 5 was the record, and he broke it with 6.
Do you know who held the previous record?
Turner's 5 home runs ties South Korea's Lee Seong-yup's mark set in the first tournament in '06.
Can you say that name again?
That was Lee Seong-yup's. He had 5 home runs. So Turner had 5, tied the record at 5.
He was a stud, man. That's who I wanted the Cubs to get this year. We were talking about it from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. They acted like he was their number 1 target, but it was the front, man.
Yeah.
But hey, that Philly lineup now with Turner in it, watch out.
And Harper's coming back, and Schwarber hit a rocket last night.
Oh my goodness! So I literally walked out of the room. I watched all those foul balls that Schwarber. It was Yu Darvish versus Schwarber.
Yeah, just like it was in the NLCS.
Schwarber knocking foul ball, rocket foul ball. And I got up, walked out of the room, and all of a sudden I just hear the TV go nuts. I walk in, and I'm like, did I really just miss a Schwarber?
How do you walk out of the room when Schwarber's at the bat, man?
He fouled off like 4. I don't know. I'm a pessimistic baseball fan because I'm a Cubs fan. I just didn't think the best was going to happen.
Well, the best didn't ultimately end up happening, but it did for that at bat. And Kyle Schwarber hit a rocket. That puppy was a missile. I think that thing was still rising as it hit the stands.
Okay, if Schwarber, I mean, even when you look back at the Cubs core of Bryant, Schwarber, Rizzo, who was the 4th? Contreras? Would you say Contreras was the 4th? Who am I missing?
Baez.
Schwarber, they said Chris Bryant came up, won MVP. They still said Schwarber was the best pure hitter.
Oh, he was.
They thought he would have the average and the power.
And that's why they put him at leadoff for that. Was it 2019, 2018, whatever year that he got
they
sent back
say
to the mound?
that Cubs front office says that, and then they cut the guy. How do you cut the guy?
And, he went on to bigger and better things. He played in the World Series again.
Moving on.
Moving on.
Before I get angry.
Japanese-Mexico game was sick.
Yes. I was cheering for Team Mexico for the reason of the media wanted Team USA versus Japan. And it's like before Mexico and Japan even played, they were like, hey, tune in tomorrow night. Probably Japan with Ohtani pitching against Team USA. Before the game even happened, that's just like pushing. It just had like NFL scripting all over it. Like, oh, we know the stage is set. Here's what we want that would get the most attention. And Team Mexico came out and said, gotta get through us first. And they were so close.
So close.
So close.
Randy Arozarena had an incredible World Baseball Classic, not only just hitting, but he robbed how many home runs? Like 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm. And then just catching a ball and
crossing the arms.
Standing there with it. That was awesome.
It was really fun. And what I loved about all of this is it showed how worldwide baseball still is. A lot of people think the World Series which is just held here, but like there's really good baseball over in Japan. It's a way of life in the Caribbean, in Mexico. These teams, the passion they played with was incredible. It was fun. It was, what did you call it last week? March Madness in baseball?
March Madness of baseball, yeah. And I think by showing how much viewership, like Japan, like for like the semifinal, or not even the semifinal, 47% of Japan TVs were tuned in or something like that. Maybe the number might be higher.
Oh, you didn't see last night's number then. Do you know what the number was last night for the
97.
97 for the Ohtani and Trout at bat.
So you know what that tells me?
97% of televisions, not just 97% of like people who tuned in and out of the game. All the TVs that were on in Japan, 97% of those were on that game. Do you know what the Super Bowl was?
Not
even
close.
It was like 55 for America.
Yeah.
And you know how national the Super Bowl is, right?
Mm-hmm.
97% of televisions.
What the mother 3% doing? They must be, they must be working. They must be supporting everybody.
They're doing. It's either that or what's that game show?
So 97% of that game. You know what that tells me though? Of Japan TVs. That was 97% of Japan TVs, right? That tells me how bad Rob Manfred is messing up the sport in America.
Oh, 100%. And not just in America, but I think he's messing it up for other countries too, because baseball is more of a regional sport here in the United States and the MLB itself.
The Ohtani's pregame speech, even though it's called the World Series and the game is still confined within the U.S., this was where the best players go. The best players come to compete in the MLB. The guys from Japan come over, from Dominican Republic come up. So that's why. So the Ohtani's pregame speech was, "I know we admire them, but tonight we have to stop admiring them and play our game." That's not word for word there, but basically he just said, "I know we admire them, tonight let's not." So that, I mean, right there, just telling the top players in Japan who have that so much attention still admire the MLB, and Rob Manfred is just destroying the game.
Oh, I 100% agree. And it showed how much, not only just for the foreign countries, but even here in the United States, the players on the USA team, the comments that came out from Mike Trout, "This is the most fun I've been having playing baseball." Paul Goldschmidt hit a home run, and he said it was the most important home run he's ever hit. He's played in playoff games. He's played for good teams. Trey Turner said something similar as well. The guy's been in L.A., he's been in a World Series champion team in Washington. Yep. He's on a team in Philadelphia now where they've got championship aspirations. I love the passion of it. And it showed. And that's what I love about the shortened portion of like the WBC is that it was, a 2-week event. Yep. And it was allowed to show the passion and wear your emotions on your sleeve, which I know 162 games, if you did that over and over, it would kind of lose its luster and lose its meaning. But it was cool to see players go. Lars Nootbaar, right? Go and play in Japan. Matt Mervis, go play for Israel. Team Italy.
Owen Cassie, Canada team, Canada. You know.
And it wasn't just the stars. It was prospects. It was players that, what'd you say last week? It was a guy who was an accountant and played third base?
For one of the countries.
Yeah.
When they went through, which country was it? I have the teams up right here. I want to say it was...
My guess is Israel.
Czech Republic.
Was it Czech Republic?
That was like, they were interviewing their players, and they were like, oh, it could have been Israel. It was Israel or Czech Republic. And they're like, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a marketing manager, and I'm playing third base for the team.
That's awesome. And then USA, Cuba. A lot of great players come from Cuba. Think of Jorge Soler. I think that's where Yasiel Puig came from.
Did you see the story about the guy who...
Yes, the catcher?
Backup catcher, yeah.
That's ballsy.
Who traveled with the team, and I wonder if he just came to the team even because he was the backup catcher.
He was the bullpen catcher. He was the bullpen catcher.
Bullpen catcher said, "Hey, I'm in a bad situation. I need help. I'm not coming back."
Yeah.
And they said, "Okay, you can be on the team." You wonder. You just don't know. But yeah, it's kind of scary for the guy because the media announced it.
Right.
The media announced he defected like the moment it happened. Like,
yeah.
Maybe shut up.
For those of you who don't know, you can't really leave Cuba unless you do it illegally. And some of these baseball players, some of the stories that have been told about them, Jose Abreu defected from Cuba. I think he was with Cuba, right? That's where he's from. Some of these players get kidnapped on a boat and taken away to a different country and then defect to the United States to play baseball. Just go back and look at some of these stories on how some of these players get over to the United States. It's kind of scary. So what this guy did is he just didn't hop back on the plane back to Cuba after. So I wonder what that's going to do for future WBCs and the Cuban teams. Will Cuba will the country refuse to let them play in the United States for the potential of that? Like, do you think there will be backlash?
You won't hear about it. I don't think you'd hear about it. I think
No.
they'd keep it, not to get into political here.
Right.
But I don't know.
I would just question, like, knowing the background of all of that. Like, if they know that they're going to lose some of their best players from the country, which they already are. I think even Luis Robert is from Cuba, who's on the White Sox. But, like, these players, they're really great talents. Like Jorge Soler, when he came to the Cubs. Yoenis Cespedes, even was Yoan Moncada Cuban as well? Is he the Cuban
I want
or
to say
Dominican?
a lot of them are. They're
Yeah.
I want to say most of them are Dominican. But then, speaking of Dominican, the Dominican Republic team,
Man,
their offense looked like it was the team to beat.
and they didn't even make it
And
out of pool play, did they?
they didn't make it out of pool play. Nope. Listen to this lineup.
Manny Machado, I know that, right?
Their catchers were Francisco Mejia from
Mejia?
the top prospect, Mejia, and Gary Sanchez. Their infielders were Robinson Cano, Rafael Devers, Wander Franco, Vlad Jr., Manny Machado, Ketel Marte, Jeremy Pena, Juan Segura, Nelson Cruz, and Willie Adames.
And wasn't Soto on that team?
Outfielders, Teoscar Hernandez, Eloy Jimenez, Julio Rodriguez, and Juan Soto.
That's an outfield.
That's an all-star team, right? I mean, an absolute all-star
And they
team.
didn't even make it out of their division.
And their starting pitcher was Sandy Alcantara, the NL Cy Young,
Mm-hmm.
which I think he shoved it, but that's...
So basically, there were 20 all-star teams that just played. Some of them didn't have the best. We'll give it that. Like, not all of Team Netherlands and not all of Team Israel and Team Italy. They're not all MLB players. But a majority of these teams were basically stacked all-star teams. And some of them didn't even make it out of their pool play. And that's what was
Some
so cool.
didn't care. Some didn't care, though. I mean, like Great Britain, their jersey, they
Right.
they sold their jerseys to the lowest bidder.
To the lowest bidder.
Whoever could make them.
They didn't sell it to Charlie Mike Never Weekend, who is a big shout out. That's who made my t-shirt and who makes our Barrels and Barrels of Bourbon and Baseball podcast t-shirt. And again, shameless plug, if you want a t-shirt, reach out to us. So the World Baseball Classic, a pretty great ending to the Classic. Obviously, as Americans, we don't like the way it ended, but at least we were there, right? You didn't even think USA was going to make it out of the pool play last week. So to be into the championship game, have a chance for back-to-back, almost did it. 3-2 final, I believe, right? But the ending
3-2.
of all endings, like, could you have scripted that any better?
No, I mean, that's where that NFL scripting is almost just, in baseball, it can't happen as easy with flags and everything, but that you couldn't have scripted it any better, like you said, Brandon.
Shohei Ohtani, the best two-way player ever to play the game, could be the best player of baseball, depending on who you ask, faces his teammate, Mike Trout, who for pretty much the last decade has been the face of baseball, the best player compared to Mickey Mantle, could be the best player.
Compared to as the greatest player ever.
Right.
And here comes Shohei.
And they come and face off. And what happens?
Pitching always
Shohei
wins.
shoves. Pitching always wins. I saw that Mike Trout in his career had only had 24 plate appearances where he had 3 swinging strikes in his entire career. And that happened last night with Shohei Ohtani. So it just shows you how incredible those two athletes are and how incredible Shohei is. Not only that he can do that on the mound, but he can hit like Trout can. Oh, and by the way, they haven't done shit as an Angels corporation in the last 3 years.
That's unreal. Those two best players are have been on the same team for how long? And that's the biggest game they've ever played.
I kept on commenting from our Facebook page. One more meaningful game for Trout and Ohtani before they return back to the Angels for 162 exhibition games.
Meaningless games.
Yeah. Well, Keith Olbermann, did you see that comment?
Yeah.
Man, all the comments about people saying these are meaningless games, and I understand there's injuries, but for every Edwin Diaz who got hurt and tore his patella tendon, it sucks. Trust me, I've been there. I've ruptured my patella tendon. I know what that is. It sucks. He's not playing again this year. Brandon Nimmo got hurt playing in a spring training game. So the Mets are in trouble.
Would you rather? I mean, you look at it; those are meaningful games against all stars, like we just said. Would you rather your players be getting ready and facing that for a couple weeks,
Right.
or going facing a single A pitcher who's trying to, who can't locate and is going to get hit by the pitch like Jose Altuve did?
Yeah, and Jose Altuve did that in the World Baseball Classic. He broke his hand and is out for 8 to 10 weeks as well. So some key injuries out of this, but we've also had key injuries in spring training. Injuries are a part of the game. They're going to happen, whether it's part of spring training, whether it's part of the World Baseball Classic. And I think this did a lot more for the sport, especially worldwide, because not only did it happen worldwide, now these people in Japan who idolize these MLB players, they may be paying attention more to a Trey Turner this year, or a Paul Goldschmidt, or a Mike Trout, because he's playing with Shohei, right? Like, I think it helps spread the game of baseball worldwide even more than it already has, and hopefully we start to see that excitement, especially with some of these new rules, right, coming into the game the next couple of weeks. I think that there will be some excitement. I think there will be some extra eyeballs just because of the new rules to see what it's like, right? Everybody loves something new, to see what something looks like when it's different. So I don't think that this hurt in any way. And if you're a person who's saying the World Baseball Classic was meaningless, hopefully you're not listening to this
You don't
podcast.
know good baseball.
Yeah, hopefully you're not listening to this podcast and you're not 45 minutes in already. Boy, that heated me up the last couple of weeks. But man, what a game, what an ending. Did you see the meme of the Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout thing? Did I not send it to you? Oh, it was so,
I haven't been looking at much today.
So funny. I think I sent it yesterday. It was like a 3-headed dragon.
Oh yes.
And it was like Team Japan with Shohei Ohtani, and it was just fierce looking dragon. And then it was Mike Trout with Team USA, fierce looking dragon. And then the third head was like the hyena from the Lion King, who's like tongue sticking out, and it says both on the same team in the MLB. This is the Angels. It was just like the team that can't do anything. It's
Unreal.
Extremely funny. Go check out MLB memes on Facebook and Instagram. It had me rolling.
I hope that they saw how exciting this when I say they, I mean pitchers for the US saw how exciting this was, and more guys want to say. And that's I'm not trying to dig at Merrill Kelly, Nick Martinez, the guys that did show up to represent.
Right.
Thank you for coming to represent the team. Thank you for showing out, and
They kept them in the game.
You could say risk. But the Team USA's best pitchers did not show up. A lot of them did not.
Scherzer, DeGrom, Verlander, they were all sitting on the sidelines. You could even Adam Wainwright, he's not the best pitcher in the USA right now, but he was on the team, right? Like, Thanks for being part of it. Just, I think we could have had a much better rotation than ended up being out there.
Right. Props to Merrill Kelly being out there.
Yeah, I mean, he kept us in the game a lot longer than I thought he would have. 3-2 final, and you can't ask for more against a team like Japan. But so that has been a wrap on the World Baseball Classic. Announcement was that it is coming back in 2026. So it's not going to be a 4-year thing. It's going to be a 3-year thing. So we don't have to wait as long. But as Michael mentioned, next year will be the first time since 2018 that we had a normal spring training. Because 2019 was the last World Baseball Classic. 2020, something happened, pandemic or something. 2021, pandemic was still going on, so they delayed spring training a little bit. And then 2022, there were labor issues. And then 2023, this year, we had the World Baseball Classic again. So next year, 2024, there will be some players in this spring training who are like, what is a normal spring training? Right? Like,
all right.
Because some players who started as rookies in 2018 could be out of the league already.
They're almost through their first rookie.
Through their first contract, yeah. Wow.
That's Nico almost.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Wow. Nico's never had normal spring training, and he's not. He was drafted that year.
2019 was the year he came up. 2020 he played as a regular in the pandemic game. And just nuts stuff there. So that was the World Baseball Classic. I mentioned the Edwin Diaz and Brandon Nimmo injuries. Also had Jose Altuve. Just really cool stuff. We're a week away as this episode drops from opening day. Before opening day, a lot of people participate in this make-believe game on the internet, just like they do for football, fantasy baseball. Hey, it's passionate. It's awesome.
I know what you're talking about.
No, I love fantasy baseball. I haven't played it. I played it last year. I'm not going to do it this year. But Michael is our fantasy baseball guru, our genius. And you got something special cooked up. But also here, as people are starting the fantasy drafts, do you have any tips? Do you have any thoughts on what they should do or look for fantasy baseball-wise?
They're saying this is the year that there is a lot of middle-tier pitching this year. Usually in the years past, those stud pitchers are hard to come by. And they say go hitter heavy early on in your drafts because there's a lot better middle-tier pitching. And you wonder if that's because the juice ball's gone. The juice ball era is over. So pitchers aren't being punished as much anymore. Who knows? Rob Manfred changes the ball every other year. You never know. But
could it be the pitch clock?
Juice ball's over. Pitch clock could be. I mean, I think the younger guys are taught to be in a rhythm, and when you get, that's what batters do. They're taught, hey, if that pitcher's in a rhythm, step out, and you don't really have that anymore, and right. You have a forced rhythm. So
go for the bigger hitters up front and
go
find
for the bigger
tier.
hitters up front and find your pitchers later. You'll figure it out.
So if you're in like a money draft where you have to play and bid on players, you would say go for the hitters and then use your lower money on middle tier pitching?
I would spend the bulk of your money on those big hitters, especially third base, shortstop, outfield. Those thin out pretty quick.
And you have something cool coming up with some buddies here, which you'll be able to find here under the umbrella of Barrels and Barrels, the Bourbon and Baseball podcast. You'll hear some of the episodes here on our feed, but where can we find you dudes, and what is it, and what are you guys cooking up?
So we're going to be starting a fantasy baseball focused podcast here that will fall under Barrels and Barrels. It's called Fantasy Camp by Barrels and Barrels.
Fantasy Camp by Barrels and Barrels.
We'll be talking week to week on waiver wire, start sits, breakouts and busts, all your fantasy advice and conversation. We'll do questions, mailbag. We'll do it all. It's going to be a fun time. We've got 3 guys that I've played fantasy baseball with since 2007, and that we've been playing together. So we know each other's what we go after, and it's a great time.
It's Keeper League.
We started our own custom Keeper League in 2015.
Cool. So that's almost a decade old.
Almost a decade. Our own rules. We wrote a constitution in Word and have it posted, and it's a great time. I
pledge allegiance to the group of fantasy baseball.
Oh, at the draft, we get together for the draft and we stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Usually it's Carrie Underwood singing for us.
And that's this weekend, right? You guys are doing your big fantasy baseball draft. You doing something cool for it?
Yeah, we're getting together. This is probably our 2015. We started getting together, all 10 to 12 of us, to get together for an auction draft. So usually about an hour, half hour in, I'm no voice from yelling. Everyone's yelling, $5. No.
You're the commissioner, aren't you?
Commish, yes.
So you're the Rob Manfred.
So the problem is we never have an auctioneer then. It's just us, and so someone has to keep it rolling. And during the draft, I never get to just stare at my as stuff happens and get to adjust. So I have to have my game plan ready to go prior to the draft starting.
Do you have any booms or busts here on Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast? I'm sure you'll have some more on Fantasy Camp from Barrels and Barrels, but here for our listeners, if they're into fantasy baseball and they've got a draft here coming up, who's your biggest boom? Who's your biggest bust of 2023?
When you hear the word bust, you think of a guy who's going to be terrible, but you can also think of it as a way of guys who are going to be drafted very high value.
Right.
But then aren't going to live up to that. I think Aaron Judge.
Does
not live up to his value. He's average draft pick like 1-2 overall. I don't know if he can put up that season that he did last year again. And in prior years, he wasn't close to that.
Right.
And so
you have to treat it like the outlier, right?
Right. So that was my bust. I think Aaron Judge might not live up to that draft draft level there. I think breakout. I think is what no one is really talking about. Nico Horner. Nico is moving from shortstop to second base. Second base is not a deep position. Nico hits the ball from gap to gap, has surprising power. In 2020, I think he was hitting close to 300 in that short season, if I'm mistaken. So I think he could have a breakout season that where if he's drafted, probably maybe even goes undrafted.
Well, and he's going to have shortstop eligibility too, right?
Shortstop and second, but the shortstop's not what you care about. You care that he's going to get that second base eligibility.
Right, but in the pinch, if for some reason your shortstop does get hurt and you have an additional second baseman, you could slide him over if need be.
Right.
So, I always thought try to draft utility guys who can play multiple positions or at least fantasy.
That helped me last year. Yeah. DJ LeMahieu, first, second, third.
Yeah, even outfield too sometimes, right? Like Javi Baez, Christopher Morel, who plays multiple
Chris Bryant,
positions.
third base and outfield.
In the outfield, right. I always looked for the guys who could play first base and outfield because you could kind of put them in both.
Wow. The 1 year where the Cubs when Rizzo would switch to a regular glove, he did that enough times to qualify for second base.
Well, and
that
so
was 2017, I want to say. I had the absolute killer lineup because I saw that coming. I knew Rizzo, so I had Rizzo as my first baseman. I traded for Paul Goldschmidt.
Hell yeah!
And everyone's like, "You have a first baseman." I was like, "Just you wait." And I had Rizzo at second, Goldschmidt at first. I had the stud of a team and still lost.
And still lost. Well, do you guys have a bragging rights trophy of some sort or anything like that? I'm sure you're probably going to get into it in your fantasy camp.
We have we get a bobblehead. We do it over on CBS, and they send us a bobblehead every year that says Fantasy Champion. But then one of our guys made a makeshift trophy. It's got baseballs on it. It's got made out of mini bats, then held up with a World Series trophy on the top of it with a baseball hat. I'll have to post a picture of our trophy there.
And there's a new Instagram account for Fantasy Camp Barrels and Barrels. Do you know what that is? Can you tell us it?
Yeah, it's at Fantasy Camp BNB.
At Fantasy Camp BNB. So go check those guys out. A couple of Michael's good buddies. They'll be putting out some fantasy content on Instagram, on YouTube. That'll be right here on our normal YouTube channel. But if you're looking for that via podcast, it's going to be a different feed. So just go search out Fantasy Camp Barrels and Barrels. So that has been another edition of Barrels and Barrels, the Bourbon and Baseball podcast. We've got a lot coming down the pike, as you just heard from Michael. We've got fantasy stuff going on. But next week is probably going to be one of my favorite episodes that we record, because it is the prediction time. This is where we
put in... Pappy?
Yeah, I wish.
Oh, okay, sorry.
The next best thing. Bardstown Origin Series. Bottled and bond weeded bourbon, as well as a high rye regular bourbon. And we're going to try to get our hands on the Origin Series rye from Bardstown. So it's going to be a trio, hopefully, of Bardstown whiskeys. And we're also going to have our 2023 season predictions, World Series, divisions, MVPs, all of that. So come check us out next week for that. Be on the lookout for that. We'll have at some point, we've been teasing it for a while, a Bourbon 101, more bourbon and whiskey reviews, more interviews, hopefully down the pike with different distilleries, different players that maybe have Major League Baseball, hopefully about that and learn more about us. You can find us on Instagram. Michael just gave out Fantasy Camp BNB. We are at Barrels and Barrels Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube under all the same handle. Twitter is at Barrels and Barrels, and you can email us, barrelsandbarrels@gmail.com. We did not get any emails saying people made it this far in the podcast last week, so nobody got a sticker. But if you've made it an hour in yet again, and you're listening, and you want a sticker, we've got a couple left. Reach out, email us, barrelsandbarrels@gmail.com. Michael, you're on Instagram. Where can we find you?
Instagram and Twitter. I'm getting a little more active on Twitter with baseball going on, fantasy baseball. Both of those are BNB_Burns.
And I am at whiskey_weather. You see it above us here on YouTube. That's another reminder. Go head over to YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. We're putting out more content. You can get more videos from Michael about fantasy baseball. I'll have some content maybe about some gambling or some advice on that if it's illegal where you live. If not, don't do it. It's against the law. I tell you, I'm going to come break your knuckles, break your knees, and knock your kneecaps out. And again, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We are now on Stitcher, also Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Podcasts. Please, 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 please rate us, review us. I just was open and honest about DFAing my first bottle, New Riff Winter Whiskey. Michael has been
okay?
I'm good. Okay I'm good. I'm pretty proud of myself, to be honest. Like, I'm holding myself up pretty high, putting myself on a pedestal today because I got my first DFA. So suck on that. That has been it for another episode of Barrels and Barrels, the Bourbon and Baseball podcast. I believe this was episode 18. Any last words for our friends and family?
Let's go.